Okay, let's kick off. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Sandu. I'm from London Partners. I'm delighted to be hosting this Q&A session with two of our valued partners today, Progress My Office and Office Freedom. Thanks very much to our panel partners and all of your participants for joining us today. Just a few housekeeping items. Just to let you know, we are recording this session. You do have a functionality at the bottom of the screen to ask a question in Q&A. Chat or raise your hand. We want this to be as interactive as possible, so please ask a question using only the Q&A tab. And if you have any technical difficulties, also put that in Q&A, and my colleague Lisa will be able to help and answer privately. So Lisa and I have been co-hosting and organising these sessions for the past few months. I had the Financial Business Service Technology team at London Partners, helping international businesses in this space as they look to set up in London. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, thank you. I co-organise these sessions with Karen, and this week I'm providing tech support. My role at London Partners as an inward investment manager is to support international businesses seeking to set up in London for the first time, to help make that process as smooth and quickly as possible.
Thank you. And we're also joined by our colleague, Alex. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Alex Waterman. I'm a business insight manager. I sit in the research and insights team at London Partners. Main role is around supporting the FDI team. So Lisa and Karen's team with inward investment projects, building out research and insights to try and detail the facts and figures of why London's a great place to do business, and also helping with some larger strategic projects as well.
Great, thanks, Alex. For those of you who are not aware, London Partners is the trade and investment and promotional agency for London. So we help to attract major events, conventions, businesses, visitors, and students to London. During these challenging times, we've been focusing on business resilience and recovery. So our clients, stakeholders, and partners are aware of the current business environment and opportunities available to them, and all the work that is being done by our businesses and our partners to help each other during this crisis. So our partners are very extremely important to us, hence the London and Partners, and we're excited to have two of them here today. So let's begin with Office Freedom. David, can you please introduce yourself, giving a brief overview of the company?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm David Garson. I'm Global Head of Enterprise at Office Freedom. To give you a bit of background, Office Freedom was founded in 1993 as the pioneer broker in the flexible workspace. We have helped over 38,000 clients now. We are not just focused on serviced offices, which is what everyone seems to think about the space. And it's a great array of space that we can offer you, from one desk, virtual offices, private offices, from 2 people, 3 people to 1,000 people. So the world has changed for us. It's no longer a blue, boring office that you fill. Now it's a lot of exciting different spaces.
Great, thanks, David. And you're right, lots to talk about in this session. And finally, Joe, can you please introduce yourself and give an overview of Progress My Office?
Sure. Hi, so I'm Joe Firestone. I'm the project director for Progress. I look after the London and Partners relationship and all of the FDI clients coming in. We've been doing that for a long time. In fact, we're the longest standing commercial partner for London Partners. And effectively, Progress is a project management company with design capability. We look after people's first office. So when they're moving out of flex space or co-working space or serviced offices, whatever, into their own space for the first time, we have a method and a process to make that simple and effective and fast. So it's well aligned to the London and Partners FDI sector in particular. Progress is delighted to be part of this panel today.
Great, thanks, Joe. And thank you to everyone that's fed in questions prior to this session. It's proven to be very popular, and so we'll aim to get through as many as possible, but please do add questions as we go along in the Q&A chat, and Lisa will be able to pick these up. So David, let's start with you. So for everyone's so everyone is aware, David will be looking at flexible workspace solutions in the current climate and how London office is changing during this pandemic, and the different safety measures that are being implemented. So over to you, David.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So the one thing to think about is that people always think of flex space as for startups, being for 1 or 2 people and everyone working together sort of in a shared environment and then moving on, you know, to have their own sort of private office away from that within a lease. The world is changing. It's changing very, very fast, as we know, because of COVID, and has sort of accelerated the process. But when I talk about serviced offices, or in America, when they talk about it, it's a sort of called co-working space. It doesn't necessarily mean all people sitting in one room, and it's not a case of one size fits all anymore, as a lot of perceptions used to be. So on your screen there, you can see we have virtual offices. The virtual world is certainly growing quicker and quicker, as we all know. You know, who had, sure many of you had, but not everyone had heard of Zoom not very long ago. Hot desking is obviously a shared space. We could talk about that and how that has changed as well since COVID-19, and dedicated desks as well. Co-working space and private office space and managed solutions, it's really tailoring a solution for you that fits you now. So, you know, we get a very, very diverse client base, from startups, from people that have just got a lot of money and just sort of decide they need an office, and we advise them on the best way to grow. So basically the office fits into your business needs, rather than in previous times where a landlord would say, you have to take a 15-year lease. You know, how big are you going to get? You know, take that space now. So we try and make your office environment work for your business rather than the other way around as well. So plenty there. And if you flick onto the next slide, there you go. I mean, there's some examples of what office space looks like now in the co-working serviced office space. 10, 15 years ago, this was unimaginable. You know, so it is a case of one size doesn't fit all. You get roof terraces, you get high ceilings, you also get these on flexible terms. And I think that's one of the most important things that we've seen now over the last 4 months. You know, a lot of people are readdressing what their office needs are, what they'll need in the future, and what they need now. And I don't think I have a crystal ball, so I don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 months. I've seen an industry adapt very, very quickly, you know, to really, I would say embrace COVID, but really cover ourselves for what is needed, and be adjustable and malleable for the future as well.
Thanks, David. David, do you think, I mean, everyone talks a lot about co-working spaces, and so many of our clients are in co-working or were in co-working spaces. Do you think that the co-working trend has peaked?
I don't even think we're anywhere near the peak. I mean, if you think about the amount of co-working space, and Lisa, if you can flick onto the next slide, I sort of talk about this as well, is that, you know, it's only just over 6% of the office stock, you know, here in central London. This is central London, not greater London as well. I've tried to focus this on central London. There are over 850 flexible workspaces. And this is growing all the time. Incredible, isn't it? Yeah. 300 different operators. We talk about, you know, the news headlines and the ones that hit the headlines, like a Regis and the Office Group, and obviously WeWork. We've been hearing a lot about those, but we've got 300 different providers just in central London. You know, almost 50 million square feet of space now as well. We're on the tip of the iceberg, to be perfectly honest. And what we've seen in the last 3-4 months is really, it's helped with the acceleration. I hate doing this, but I compare it to often what we've seen in Deliveroo and Just Eat. You know, we've seen an online shopping. We've seen a vast growth in that. And people are now talking to us much more about the flexibility that's required. You know, companies that were looking at 5-10 year leases are now taking rolling monthly contracts over the next few months. Yeah, just deciding that they want to, you know, look at different aspects and how they work, what's going to be important for them. You know, hiring has changed, demand has changed. So there's certainly been a lot of things coming through that have really changed, I think, the way we approach offices. And you know, Joe will talk about that as well within the internal space, but also the approach that businesses are having now to where they want to work and how they want to work as well. So I think we're just on the tip of the iceberg personally. You're seeing huge investment coming in from companies like Blackstone, like the Carlyle Group, you know, into companies as they look at the expansion both globally, and London is at the forefront of this. London is probably the most advanced flexible workspace city in the world now. We're certainly seeing the growth. Everyone talks about New York. London, we can accommodate anyone from, as I said, companies coming in from 1 to 2 people, companies that want their own space, that want to have it branded. We can do this all within the flex space arena now. And we're seeing a big change coming from landlords now. Used to be in the environment where people would say, well, if you want to, you have to own your own space now. And I think with new generations coming through, that we don't necessarily feel that now. You want to have your own identity within a space, that's without a doubt. But actually having it on your balance sheet, I'm not so sure anymore.
Right.
So it's very, very varied.
Okay, it's good to know. Just the next slide, I think, Lisa, please.
Yeah. But it's been a very, very strange few months, I think, for everyone. I don't think we were quite prepared in London or in the UK, and certainly in some other countries. COVID-19 was something that didn't really happen here till we actually got locked down. But what we have seen is that co-working spaces have really had to embrace and give guidance, in line with what the government has been saying, to really, really look after their clients, and in that case also help look after the staff. And it's not only just the issue of safety, there's also HR issues as well that all have to be taken into consideration. And we can talk about remote working. We've all had to do it, I think.
Still doing it?
Yeah, some of us are still doing it. But we are certainly seeing demand picking up now as well. And the major question I get is, what's the COVID policy? What are these co-working spaces doing? How are they shifting, way that they're using the space? How are they shifting how they use the breakout space? We talked about a little bit about hot desking. Hot desking is going to be a little bit more difficult. So what a lot of companies like the office group I was in the other day, their hot desking area is now a dedicated desk area. So you book your desk for the day rather than jumping around. There's cleaners all around all the time. So effectively you're outsourcing, I don't know what to call it, your COVID cleaning, making sure that everything's okay there. What we are seeing, and what we're certainly seeing a pickup in London of demand, and we're not talking about necessarily people rushing back to the office straight away. We're talking about this magic date between September and October when children go back to school. But what we're seeing now is I'm getting a lot of call for companies with younger staff. It's all very well for I guess middle-aged people, I've got myself in that bracket, to sit there and I meant me, obviously, none of the rest of the panel. For me to sit at home in my nice comfy house, but I'm not members of my team who are either living at home or in a bed sit in London and crawling out of bed and then clicking on their computer. And I think the Times reported today that people want to work with other people want to be around other people. And whether that's a shift in how we use the space, whether it becomes dropping in, coming in 2-3 days a week, we certainly see that. We are seeing a rise for demand in private and managed space. Without a doubt, we're seeing as companies want, just to give you what I mean by that, with a managed space is a much more bespoke design. It's within, it's a serviced office floor, as it were, have their own kitchen, dedicated space. They're not so, sharing so much. Within the communal space, what we're seeing is that the COVID policies brought out by companies such as the office group TOG, IWG, they adhere to safety standards, whether that's 2 meters, 1 meters. I mean, it seems to change all the time. And we don't know, but it's very, very fluid. They're responsible for the air conditioning, they're responsible for all these things that are important, for internal HR and staff and for the well-being of staff. And we practice what we're preach. We're in a co-working space. So we're very aware of what has to be done to keep all the staff happy, including me. I'm nervous about, a lot of people are nervous about going in, and I think you have to make things seem a little bit easier. And I think I put on there the meeting workspace demands of Generation Z and millennials is so important now. And you talk about the changes in demands, and you know, the older generation would sort of go to work and sort of look for a job for life and be happy working. Now with millennials, how are you going to keep me? How are you going to keep me happy?
So David, we do have some questions. So do you think that with so many people working from home, the days of the office are numbered? You kind of already addressed that, but do you foresee any downsides to long-term home working?
I think there's a balance. I don't think there's a magic answer with, you know, one or the other. I think what we've seen now is that some people like to work from home a few days a week. But I think that people are still demanding, you know, that they want office space and want a change of environment. It's going to depend from company to company. You know, we talked about having drop-in centres where people come and collaborate together, rather than sort of having the fixed desk environment. Certainly seen a little bit more of that in the last month or so, and demand for that. You know, I'm going to talk about hub and spoke strategies as well, where, you know, speaking to one of the big banks the other day, and I was speaking to the head of equities and the head of debt, who are in the same building, but they said they've seen more of each other on Zoom in the last month and a half than they have physically from being in the same office. So
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure whether we'll have, you know, the super centre, you know, where all 4,000 people or 2,000, 4,000 people are going in. Maybe we'll have a situation where, to a degree, where you're dropping into certain centres. We have an HQ and then hubs maybe around Greater London. I mean, you know, we're seeing demand in areas like, just an example, like Finchley and you know, non-core areas south of the river as well, where we wouldn't have seen demand as higher levels of demand before, and demand there is picking up for companies that want to have a small drop-in centre. So it is changing. So no, far from it. I don't think there's a magic answer that we have one. It is going to depend from company to company and from industry to industry. I think you will see companies embracing their split shifts, you know, different hours and when people come in, you know, the 9 to 5, I think has been over for quite a while. And I think this has just really accelerated. You know, people are more worried about well-being now, about sustainability.
That's my question. So, and it's everything that, you know, everyone's thinking about safety. So can an office really be safe? And what's being done to create safe offices, especially in the current environment? I'll give you an example. At our office, we are all going back in 2 days a week in September. And I've just found out that the air is now going to be kind of fresh air that's going through the building. I thought that was always the case, but apparently not. So can you give any answers to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. You know, people are more concerned, where I think, you know, people weren't really noticing what kind of air was going in, as it were. People talked about, is the air conditioning going to be too cold above my desk? I mean, that was sort of the main question 5 months ago. Now, you know, for example, some of the people that I've dealt with this week, I mean, the demand is, can you confirm, you know, is the air conditioning new, what filters you have on? I mean, Joe will be able to talk about this a lot more as well. But we're certainly, without a doubt, I mean, the COVID guide that, you know, we'll happily share with you that different operators are providing really makes this a key element. And, you know, a lot of people are very, very focused on that going forward. Safety is paramount.
Yeah, I think there's some safety key measures on the next slide. Should we just go to that one?
That'd be great.
Lisa, please. Thanks.
I mean, this is some of the examples that, you know, flexible spaces and providers are talking about now. You know, they were very, very quick to come out and keep on improving the way that we work. I mean, you know, if you've been into any of the buildings now, you know, operating one-way systems as well, constant cleaning. I walked into a company called Fora. I had a temperature check as I walked in.
Yeah.
The other day, all the staff were in masks as well. There's full hand washing and sanitation. The ventilation we've talked about as well, and you know, a lot of wellness and health programs. A lot of providers were doing that already. You know, lots of different classes, but you know, those will continue on Zoom, and they will continue to do things along those lines. So, the shared facilities is always the one that I think that scared people the most. You had, you know, these great collaboration areas. And, you know, you can see clearly from signage when you go in, you know, same as you know, you're not allowed to sit in certain seats. You know, if you are going to sit and work in a seat, you've got to almost book it, make sure it's dedicated. And we don't know how long this is going to last for. what we can see is like this industry, it can adapt so quickly to change. It can just give you and your staff comfort, and effectively outsource it as well, which is obviously, you know, something that, you know, a lot of people want to just crack on with running their business.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, to a degree you do worry about this, but you know, you still need to make your business function. And, you know, if you can outsource a lot of this and, you know, being in an environment where it's taken away from you all that responsibility, but looked after and managed properly, you're going to feel a lot of comfort.
Okay. It's good to know. I mean, a lot of these are considerations that, I mean, especially with the wellness and health and well-being of staff, that's one of the most important. Just conscious of time, should we go to the next slide?
Sure. I've sort of talked about this as we go. You know, flexibility, you know, is key, and we've seen that over the last 4 months, or, you know, really. And I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of my clients that were coming to me that were either previously taking leases, or you know, now sort of looking at flexibility in terms of what size, location, amenities they need as well. You know, no one quite knows how fast they're going to grow. Again, we're allowed to decide our term now. You know, the term is decided by you. If you don't think you're going to grow for 6 months, don't take a bigger office. Look at the fact that you can expand. All your services and amenities are provided. If you need something else, you know, you bolt something on as well. And the traditional office, which is, I would say that, you know, the big box, you've got that escape now with breakout space, which the younger generation, and I've got to say the older generation as well, but certainly the younger generation are not always comfortable sitting in an office working at the same desk. They like to have alternative spaces. So be that, I would say today's a bad example if you're in London, roof terrace, you know, looking at the other areas, breakout spaces, gyms. You know, a lot of places have gyms, podcast studios, and also the entry costs are very, very low. You've got, you know, zero capex, all-inclusive billing as well.
Yeah.
And fixed pricing, and you know, hopefully no big exit fee as well. But the wellness and well-being thing, you know, I would emphasise is very, very important to people now. And I think one of the things that COVID has done is accelerated not the whole of the space, but also the fact of how important wellness is to the individual, to staff, to employees and employers as well.
Yeah. No, thank you, David. Just, if I were a business owner considering renewing a central London office lease, what advice would you offer?
Talk to me, because let's explore all the options. I'm talking to a lot of people about this at the moment. I mean, it's probably what I do all the time. And we'll talk to you about and run through your business and what your business really needs and what's important to you. The biggest misconception is that 10, 15 years ago is that serviced offices, co-working spaces to take your own space were much more expensive. If you look at your total occupancy costs now, you know, can help you through this. You know, we're looking at like for like and sometimes cheaper, all your costs put together. You know, we do a lot of work for clients on this. Sometimes they decide they're going to stay with the lease, refit their space, you know, do something along those lines. Yeah. And the majority I speak to will say to us, well, let's look at a more flexible solution, be that with time, cost, you know, or the fact that they're going to grow at different times within the next 3 years. It's very hard to know how quickly your business is going to grow or contract. Yeah. You know, over 3 years.
This leads on to my final question, because there are a lot of businesses on the line. And so what are the most important things to consider for a business looking for workspace in London at this current time? Because we do have clients that are asking about space, obviously, in the next few months.
Absolutely. Well, look, flexibility is going to be the key word going forward. You know, we're in a very, very strange situation where we're learning more and more each day about this terrible blight on our society and on our lives. And when we don't know what's around the next corner, let's give ourselves as much flexibility as possible. You know, we are putting in COVID clauses as well. You know, to seeing reductions when people can't go in. We're just trying to make the business work for you now, your office work for you now, and that's really the key message. Is that, you know, let's see how things pan out over the next 3 to 6 months. If you were thinking of taking a lease, delay it.
Yeah.
You know, go and try this market, see if it works for you. You know, and if you need that flexibility, if you know where your business is and going to be for the next 5 years, go for a managed solution, go for a lease, look at all, you know, explore all the avenues. It's not a case of one size fits all. You know, that's sort of the misconception, I think. And, you know, come and talk to us, explore what's out there.
Thanks, David. Flexibility is definitely the key, and speak to David if you have any questions. So we are getting questions in. I'm conscious of time. So David, if you could please just answer directly in the Q&A chat to the questions that have come in now, that would be fantastic. And thanks a lot for your time, appreciate it. We're now going to move on to Alex, who'll give some insights into mobility and the workplace.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so I'm just going to take you through 3 slides around some mobility in London and some attitudes towards getting back to work into the workplace. So next slide, please. So firstly, some mobility data is showing that people in London are gradually getting back into the workplace. So this is some data that we've taken from Google. So they've been tracking some of their community and location data. And what it is a metric about mobility changes or location changes compared to the baseline or the average within Greater London. So where are people at any given day compared to the normal or compared to the baseline? So in the red line, you've got Google tracking when the people are in their workplace, and in the blue line, they're tracking when they're in their residence, when they're at home. As you can see, in the early stages of lockdown, workplace had a massive drop, so went down to 76%, and it's gradually getting back and closer to the baseline. So kind of resting at around minus 46%. So workplaces and workplace locations are around 50% capacity. And then contrast that with residential. When we first went into lockdown, we had an increase of 31%. You probably might expect that to be slightly larger, but I think a lot of that comes from the fact that some people in London might move to locations outside of London, and also because people spend so much time at home anyway, given that it tracks you when you're asleep, it's hard to have that kind of incremental uplift. So it went up to 31% in the early or phase 1 of lockdown, and this is gradually moving back down to normal. So we're about 13% above how much time people usually be spending at home. So this is the data about, you know, location, about where people actually are. And on the next slide, please. So this is actually when we ask them about their kind of behaviour and their attitude towards working from a workplace. So Londoners are feeling more and more comfortable with working from their workplace than they were previously. So this is data from a survey that we ran here at London and Partners, looking at sentiments of Londoners. So this took place, this data is from July the 24th to 27th. So it was we call this our first wave. And as you can see, we asked people how comfortable they feel at the prospect of doing various different activities. The thing they were most comfortable about was visiting parks, and then closely followed by friends and family. And things they were least comfortable about, as you'd probably expect, is live music and taking part in team sports and going to the theatre. So working from a workplace is about middle of the pack, and this kind of actually matches up quite well to the data from the previous slide. So just over 50% of people are actually now kind of feeling comfortable about going back into the workplace. Worth noting here that we did actually an initial preliminary wave June 5th to 9th, so about a month and a half before that. This figure was much lower, so this was down at 32% of respondents were happy with or felt comfortable with going back to the workplace. So, you know, it's almost doubled, and people are feeling much more comfortable with it.
That's good to know. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, really good to know. And then, next slide, please. So I think, of that 57%, it's important to realise that, you know, everyone's kind of got very different attitudes. People have got different attitudes towards the pandemic and how they feel about getting back to normal. And what we've done here is we've actually segmented our respondents, or segmented Londoners, based on more behavioural aspects and how they feel about getting back to normal. On the right-hand side, this is from the survey taken in July, end of July 24th to 27th. So you've got, we've designated them into 6 different categories. So you've got the kind of people that have always wanted, always kind of felt that the lockdown was too extreme and they want restrictions lifted immediately. You have the eager returners. So these tend to be millennials. They might have young children as well. So they're quite keen for things to go back to normal. They might have been the kind of people that have started to use Eat Out to help out. You also got another group of millennials, which is actually the worriers. So these are very similar to eager returners, but the fact that they're potentially more concerned about some financial fallout that's come from the pandemic. But these are also a group of people that want to get their life back as well. Another category, so these are the kind of countries that are much more likely to want to get back into the workplace and get things back to normal. We then have another category which is less involved. This is probably the group that I would put David in potentially. So this is those that don't have particularly strong feelings about working from the office or working at home. They're quite happy working from home at the moment, but they probably be equally happy to be back into the office if their company was to say so. And then you have the last 2 groups, so cautious and it was all worth it. So these actually tend to be older respondents who are much more worried about the health and implications of things going back to normal and having to resume kind of normal life and mobility. It's worth noting that these 2 groups are those which tend to be much older, some of working age and some actually older than working age. So we're definitely finding that people, particularly millennials and particularly Gen Z as well, so people 24, 25 and under, those are people sitting in the eager returners and the worriers. So they're the groups of people that really want to get back into the office. And I think, just to echo what both Karen and David have said, I think flexibility is key, and employers are going to, there's a massive understanding that all your employees are going to have very different attitudes. It's just finding ways to work around that. That's everything from me.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Alex. Fascinating insights into how Londoners feel at the moment. Appreciate it. And we're going to move swiftly on to Joe.
Hi.
Hi, Joe.
Still here.
You're still here. Well, that's a good start. So I'm just going to kick off actually, because we've got a lot of questions, but it's a question that I do get asked, but do we really need offices anymore?
I think fundamentally the answer has to be yes. Humans are companies' greatest asset generally, talent as we like to call it now. And we're a communicative species. We want to be together and work together and collaborate. So the thought that can't happen in an office anymore is just a bit too weird to think is real. Everyone will have a personal opinion about how long this pandemic will last and the impacts of that. Whether we express personal views about timescales, probably isn't the right forum for that. But I don't think there is enough time for human behaviour to change, and there's a desire for us all to be together in a change of environment from home to work, particularly for younger people who don't have ideal working conditions at home. And older people have gone through that journey as well. So they've enjoyed going out for drinks after work and mixing and growing their careers. Younger people want that. Older people do still want it, but they probably have a more favourable attitude to working from home, having commuted for 20 years. That there is a different mindset to that. There's also a very different thing about the time period we're talking about. Lockdown was in March. It's now August. Some people are seeing this as a period of holiday difference, a variety of change in life. If people really thought this was a 5-year process, I think it'd be a very different situation we're facing right now than we are now. So my view is absolutely not. Offices are definitely going to be around forever. It's clear to me.
Interesting. It's definitely sentiment I'm getting is that it will probably be a hybrid. There's a lot of people do still need that face-to-face contact. So what are the long-term implications on workspaces? You have touched on it, but what are the long-term implications on workplace design resulting from us having now work from home? All your clients that you're working with.
Yeah, so I can give you some anecdotal information on current work, what we're doing for some people. I can give you some personal views. I think that from a trend perspective, what we are seeing is what we've all known for a long time, is that home working can work. And therefore, it would be bizarre to think that home working won't make a major implication in the scale of offices in the future. Most people will try and gather 1 or 2 days a week at home as part of their package of work with their employer. Even young people would, generally speaking, want that type of flexibility. David mentioned about working hours. It could be that people start doing much more shift work because they can do, they can work from home in the inefficient travelling commute time, but then get to the office later on in the day, still do the day's work and have a much better life output. We're seeing changes like that. Because companies are allowing that to happen right now, it's going to be very hard for them to turn it off because talent will walk. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic, particularly for larger companies that are slow to respond. So workplace design will have to keep up with that. What we will definitely see for sure is much more collaborative space internally once we're no longer worried about catching germs from each other. So every single facility will have a conference screen because 2 people will be in the room and 4 people will be out of the room. So they've got to be on video link for that to work well. So everything will become digital. There's no doubt in my mind about that. These are all personal views, of course. We will see, of course, in the short term, facilities greatly reduced. People will not want to be touching the same surfaces as other people. And so things like keyboards and phones, they have to become personal. There's no way somebody's going to want to share a keyboard. They shouldn't be doing that anyway, because we've known that for a long time, but they definitely don't want to do it now. So we'll see that as a change. Some of it is very obvious that we'll see. What's hard is to understand the future predictions, because, last month it was 2 meters, this month it's 1 meter. What is it in 2 weeks' time?
Yeah, that's very true.
What is it in 6 months' time? So it is very hard to understand. But we can see those logical steps are what our customers are talking to us right now about.
So what? That's very true. You don't know what the next 6 months will hold in that respect. So what should companies do to minimise risk during the pandemic if they decide to return to the workplace, which a lot of them are?
Yeah, they are. I mean, we're helping quite a lot of customers back in now, and some are staying away completely. I can cover that as well, but we are helping people back. There's 2 sides to this. Operationally, it's an HR thing. Most organisations are seeing having a wake-up call on risk. Larger corporates, of course, have risk departments. Smaller SMEs and startups are being made aware of risk, maybe for the first time, or seeing it as a major part of their business strategies. What can happen to our business to derail it? No one saw this coming, but everyone should have a strategy in place to deal with risk. And so we're seeing that people are definitely splitting teams. That's their most go-to process. So if you've got 20 people in an accounts department, those are split into 2 groups of 10 or 4 groups of 5, and those people don't come into the office together. That's the key. The business will need to rely on the fact they don't socialise together outside of their groups, which becomes an issue for HR, and pulls us back full circle into the comparison to shared and workspace, flexible workspace, because people don't know what other people are doing in other companies sharing those spaces, which is all this dynamic about risk. It comes back into this profile and how companies deal with that. So minimising the HR risk from a strategy perspective seems very logical, not really what I do. What we do is concentrate on air quality. We will see a major change very shortly in introduction of cleaning air technology. There are some breakthroughs. There's been some technology in the background for a long time. Nobody's been buying it, but they're going to start buying it soon. Things that remove 99.9% of a virus in the particle of air and then just recirculate the area. They exist.
Fascinating.
So it's out there. No one will have heard of these companies yet, but give it 4 weeks or 3 months and they're going to be very big. People that own this technology. So we're going to see that. And obviously things like hand sanitation, good signage, and screens if people need to work closer than what is the current regulations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So this is a question that a lot of people ask, because I think people still might think landlords have all the power, but are landlords still holding the cards when it comes to traditional lease negotiations?
It's a bit early to say. It's difficult for London because, and you know, David talks about flexibility and difficulty in lease signing, and you know, to a certain extent, I have to agree. You know, landlords in central London and any successful major city generally are sitting on property which is institutionally financed. It's very difficult to build flexibility into a lease that is wanting to be sold as a package. Onto pension fund investors. The two things don't sit well together. But the result of that is that flexible working is a middleman. And David and I will never agree on cost because a middleman must make a profit. You know, every middleman must make a living. So there is a fundamental difference in approach.
Thanks, Joe. So this again is something that people think, but are high-rise buildings less appealing now?
Definitely right now, and I think that's got to be a real concern for anyone in the property sector. With you know, Canary Wharf full of towers and the city full of towers, occupancy of a building in these large, high buildings is entirely geared around the speed of those lifts and how they work. As we start to go back to work, you know, if you can only fit two people in a lift that would have fitted 24 before or 4, you know, then the numbers are very different. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the landlords react to that challenge, whatever lease structure is internally in that space. That's going to be a really interesting dynamic. Right now, occupying a 40th floor building must be quite a concern.
That's very true. I mean, we're in the 6th floor, so it's nothing like the 40th. But
walking up 6 flights of stairs is no piece of cake. I did it yesterday, 4 flights, and you know, wasn't best pleased when I got to the end of it. But 40 floors is impossible. It's just never going to happen. You know, there is a difference between, you know, anything above 10, 12. It's a major ask to ask people to walk to their desk.
Okay, thank you. So what is the first step in searching for a new office space?
For us, we preach this a lot. It's preparation. Our customers really should undergo what we call a feasibility study to understand exactly how much space they need. It's never been more important to establish the space you need. The formulas that exist are just too archaic, you know, 100 square foot per person or whatever the agents generally throw about. It's much more complex than that. And the need to get an accurate prediction of space just really informs that decision process early on. It has major benefits going through, but it is a really important process. So Progress does that for London & Partners clients. That's also a free service just for you guys. But we carry out feasibility studies for clients constantly and encourage them to engage and talk through that process. It's a real important step. And
Thanks.
Time. Sorry.
No, thanks, Joe. That's really helpful. And for our clients, it's important to say that is a free kind of service that you can help with. In fact, you helped us refit our office as well.
Yes, we worked with you for a long time. We see this as very important, and therefore it's part of our partnership for you.
Okay, great, thank you. So how long, and you've helped a lot of our clients find their own space, how long does it take to find and then fit out your own office space?
Ideally, 9 months, between 9 and 6 months is the perfect timescale. That's what we encourage people to think on. From you know, day of saying we want to do this to wanting to be occupational. That's the kind of turnaround that's sensible.
Okay. With regard to like negotiating tenancy agreements with office landlords or providers, what representation do you recommend?
Well, they should have an agent. It's definitely in central London. Should be somebody, David does this. There are other agents in the mix as well, and they need that representation for sure. They'll need a QS, project manager, and an interior designer to organise the fit out, or they can employ Progress that does all those functions in house if they prefer. So they need a representation in both sides, really.
Thanks, Joe. So we actually had a question that came from someone before, prior to the session, who basically said that people are now choosing office based on facilities and lifestyle, and also on their sustainability credentials. And it could be one for you or David, but how will employers and landlords go about providing a good quality kind of working environment which are more responsible in terms of sustainability? And I think, you know, everyone's focusing on well-being. They are definitely focusing on sustainability. And I'm just wondering what trends you're seeing in the work that you're doing.
Well, the majority of sustainability that we're involved with in terms of fit out would be choice of materials and energy consumption. You know, that's our role, is to make sure that materials are recycled wherever possible, or would be recycled on end of use. There is a big there's a big issue in the market, generally speaking, in that landlords tend to fit out large areas of space because clients lack the ability to see that space fitted out, and often that's then refitted by tenants moving in. It's something I've been speaking on for a while. So we would encourage any kind of movement in that to really reduce our impact on the environment. And again, the feasibility studies to understand space in advance of searching would facilitate that. So that people can understand how things would look once they get in. So there's a couple of issues in the market generally that do need addressing, but buildings are built to be efficient now because the cost of energy is high, and it is a big part of the landscape. It's not swept under the carpet anymore. It's a major issue that everyone that's, you know, serious is tackling.
Great, thanks so much. I think we're going to have to finish it off there, but we could talk about this all day. I think we've got so many questions that we haven't answered. I will be sharing contact details, and please feel free to reach out to Joe and David directly. I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone for participating and attending. We'll have future sessions monthly going forward. So when we send a follow-up email, we'll put these details in the email. Before I wrap up, Lisa, do you just want to speak about the Zoom poll?
Hi everybody, so we've got some Zoom polls that I'm going to launch now, and it's just to get a little bit of feedback from you on how the session went. So you'll see the 4 questions on your screen. First one is, how likely are you to recommend London and Partners Q&A sessions to another business? So you can click there. How helpful did you find the session today? Third question, how engaging and interactive do you find the format of the session? And the last question is, what business support areas are you most interested in? So as Karen said, we're going from fortnightly to monthly. So we want to make sure that we're covering the best content we can for our clients. So I'll end that in 5 seconds. Okay.
Brilliant, thanks so much, Lisa. And again, thanks to David and Joe and Alex for all your kind of contributions today, really helpful. Our next session will be on the 16th of September, and it will be focusing on talent, which again, like I said, we'll send over in the follow-up email. This is just our WhatsApp Good News Room. If you are interested in good news stories, funding, whatever it might be, please just send your details to this number, and we'll be able to send those to you. And then our last slide really just has all of our contact details. Please feel free to reach out to Joe and David directly if you've got any questions on office space. Like I said, we've had lots of questions that haven't been answered. So please feel free to reach out to them directly. And Lisa and Alex can help if you're looking to expand your business into London. And that's it for us today. Thank you everyone so much. Look after yourselves and stay well, and see you next time.